The galaxy was falling apart. Stars that once shone brightly in the vast darkness now flickered like dying candles. Planets, once thriving with life, were reduced to barren wastelands. The Vorthak had come, and nothing could stop them. No one knew where they came from or why they attacked, but their arrival meant only one thing: destruction. On Earth, leaders gathered in hidden bunkers deep underground. They whispered about the end, their voices heavy with fear. The Vorthak had already destroyed dozens of human colonies. Billions of lives were lost, and those who survived lived in constant terror. The once great human empire was now a shadow of its former self, clinging to survival by sheer luck. Daniel Carter stood at the center of the room, his face pale but determined. He was a strategist, a man known for finding solutions when there seemed to be none. But even he struggled to think of a way out this time. The Vorthak were too powerful, too relentless. Every attempt to fight back had ended in failure. Ships sent to confront them never returned. Colonies fortified with advanced defenses were overrun within hours. "We can't keep running," Daniel said, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, but carried an edge of urgency. "If we don't act now, humanity will be wiped out." The others looked at him, their faces grim. Some shook their heads in despair. Others stared blankly, as if they had already given up. But one person spoke up, a woman named General Lisa Monroe. She was tall and stern, her eyes sharp and unyielding. "What do you suggest?" she asked. "Our fleets are gone. Our weapons are useless against them. What can we possibly do?" Daniel hesitated for a moment before answering. "We deploy Task Force Eclipse." A murmur rippled through the room. Everyone knew what that meant. Task Force Eclipse was not just any group of soldiers. They were ruthless, feared even by their own people. Their methods were brutal, their missions often morally questionable. But they got results. If anyone could stand a chance against the Vorthak, it was them. General Monroe frowned. "They're our last resort. Are you sure we want to go down that path?" "We don't have a choice," Daniel replied. "Without them, we're finished." Far away from Earth, on a small outpost orbiting a distant moon, Elena Torres worked tirelessly to repair a damaged communications array. She was an engineer, skilled with machines but inexperienced in combat. Her colony was one of the few still standing, though everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the Vorthak found them. Elena paused for a moment, staring out at the stars. Something felt wrong. The usual hum of the station seemed quieter than usual. Then she heard it, a low, ominous rumble. It grew louder, shaking the walls around her. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across the corridors. "The Vorthak," someone shouted over the intercom. "They're here." Panic erupted as people scrambled to defend themselves. But it was no use. The Vorthak tore through the colony's defenses like paper. Ships descended from the sky, unleashing waves of biomechanical drones. Explosions rocked the station, sending debris flying in every direction. Elena ran toward the control room, her heart pounding. She knew there was no escape. The colony was surrounded. She reached the console and activated the distress signal, hoping someone, anyone, would hear it. As she finished, the door burst open, and a group of Vorthak soldiers stormed in. They moved with unnatural speed, their glowing eyes scanning the room. One of them grabbed Elena by the arm, pulling her to her feet. She struggled, but it was pointless. The Vorthak were stronger, faster, and far more advanced. As they dragged her away, she caught one last glimpse of the stars outside. Tears streamed down her face. All hope was lost, or so it seemed. Little did she know, humanity's most dangerous soldiers were already preparing to fight back. The decision was made. Task Force Eclipse would be deployed. The order came down from General Lisa Monroe herself, her voice firm, but tinged with unease. She trusted Daniel Carter's judgment, even if the idea of unleashing such a dangerous group made her stomach churn. These soldiers were not heroes in the traditional sense. They were cold, calculating, and willing to do whatever it took to win. even if it meant crossing lines no one else dared to cross. Captain Ryan Blake stood at the head of his team, their faces illuminated by the dim light of the briefing room. He was a tall man with sharp features and an aura of quiet intensity. His piercing blue eyes scanned the room as he addressed his soldiers. "This mission won't be easy," he began, his tone steady, but carrying a weight that silenced any potential protests. "We're going into enemy territory. We'll face things we've never seen before. But our objective is clear: find survivors, gather intel, and hit them where it hurts." The team listened intently. Corporal Jessica Lane sat near the back, cleaning her rifle with practiced efficiency. Her blonde hair was tied back tightly, and her green eyes showed no fear, only focus. Beside her, Sergeant Lucas Ford leaned against the wall, arms crossed. A veteran of countless battles, Ford had seen too much death to feel excitement anymore. Instead, he carried a grim determination, though his mind occasionally wandered back to past failures that haunted him. Private Marcus Reed, the youngest member of the team, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He hadn't been with Task Force Eclipse for long, and the reputation of his comrades intimidated him. Still, he tried to appear confident, knowing full well that showing weakness here could cost him dearly. General Monroe entered the room, her presence commanding immediate attention. "You're our last hope," she said bluntly. "Earth can't send reinforcements. If you fail, humanity might not survive." Her words hung heavy in the air. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. Hours later, the team boarded the warship U.S. Vanguard *, a sleek vessel equipped with advanced weaponry and cloaking technology. As they launched into space, Captain Blake walked among his soldiers, checking their gear and offering quiet words of encouragement. He stopped beside Jessica Lane, who was adjusting the scope on her sniper rifle. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded without looking up. "Always." In another corner of the ship, Lucas Ford sat alone, staring at a photo of his family. They had died years ago during an earlier conflict, and their loss still weighed heavily on him. He clenched his fists, vowing silently that he wouldn't let anyone else suffer the same fate. As the Vanguard approached Vorthek-controlled space, tension filled the air. The crew monitored sensors closely, searching for signs of enemy activity. Suddenly, alarms blared. A massive Vorthek fleet appeared on the horizon, their ships dark and menacing. "We've got company," the pilot announced, his voice tight with urgency. Captain Blake moved to the front of the bridge. "Stay calm. Activate the cloak and hold position." The ship vanished from sight, hidden by its advanced technology. The Vorthek fleet passed by, unaware of their presence. For now, they were safe, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. Later, as the team reviewed intercepted transmissions, they discovered something chilling. The Vorthek weren't just attacking randomly. They were harvesting resources, and humans, for some unknown purpose. Alina Torres's distress signal confirmed it. Survivors were being taken prisoner, forced to work in sprawling extraction facilities. "This changes everything," Blake muttered, studying the data. "If we don't stop them, they'll drain every planet dry." Jessica Lane glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "Then we'd better get started." The mission ahead was daunting, but Task Force Eclipse didn't have the luxury of doubt. Each soldier steeled themselves for what was to come, knowing that failure wasn't an option. Humanity's survival depended on them, and they intended to fight like hell to protect it. The U.S. Vanguard descended quietly onto a desolate planet deep within Vorthek territory. The landscape was barren, filled with jagged rocks and endless stretches of gray sand. The air was thick with dust, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. Task Force Eclipse moved cautiously, their boots crunching softly against the ground as they stepped off the ship. Captain Ryan Blake led the way, his rifle ready in his hands. He scanned the area carefully, his sharp eyes searching for any sign of danger. Behind him, Corporal Jessica Lane adjusted her sniper scope. scanning the horizon for movement. Sergeant Lucas Ford carried heavy equipment on his back, his face grim but focused. Private Marcus Reed followed closely, trying to keep his nerves under control. "This place feels wrong," Reed whispered, glancing around nervously. "It's too quiet." "Quiet doesn't mean safe," Ford replied sharply. "Stay alert." The team advanced toward the extraction facility, a massive structure looming in the distance. It looked like a fortress, its dark walls lined with strange symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. The facility was surrounded by biomechanical drones patrolling the perimeter. The Vorthak had spared no effort to protect whatever they were doing inside. Blake signaled for the team to stop. "Lane, take position. Cover us from higher ground." He pointed to a rocky ridge nearby. Jessica nodded and quickly climbed up, her movements silent and precise. Once she was in place, she peered through her scope, watching the enemy movements below. "Got eyes on multiple targets," she reported over the comms. "Drones moving in patterns. Looks like they're guarding something big." "Good," Blake said. "We need to get closer without being seen. Stick to the shadows." The team crept forward, using the terrain to stay hidden. They moved slowly, careful not to make any noise. The tension was palpable, each step feeling heavier than the last. Every sound, the rustle of fabric, the crunch of gravel, felt deafening in the eerie silence. As they approached the facility, they noticed something horrifying. Rows of human prisoners were chained outside, forced to work under the watchful eyes of Vorthak guards. Their faces were gaunt, their bodies weak from exhaustion. Some stumbled as they carried heavy loads of ore, only to be beaten back into line by the aliens' cruel weapons. Ford clenched his fists at the sight. "We can't leave them here," he muttered angrily. "We won't," Blake assured him. "But we need information first. Find out what they're building. Then we'll make our move." Jessica's voice crackled over the comms. "I've got a clear shot at one of the guards. Permission to take it?" "Negative," Blake replied firmly. "Not yet. We don't know how many reinforcements are nearby. Wait for my signal." The team pressed on, slipping past patrols and avoiding detection. Finally, they reached an access point, a small door partially hidden behind a pile of debris. Blake motioned for Ford to pick the lock while the others kept watch. Within moments, the door clicked open, and they slipped inside. The interior of the facility was even more unsettling than the outside. Strange machines hummed loudly, filling the air with a low, ominous vibration. Tubes ran along the walls, pulsing with an eerie green light. The smell of chemicals burned their noses, and the temperature dropped noticeably as they moved deeper inside. They found themselves in a large chamber filled with consoles and monitors. Belina Torres sat hunched over one of them, her wrists bound to the chair. She looked up in shock as the team entered, unsure if they were friend or foe. "It's okay," Blake said calmly, lowering his weapon slightly. "We're here to help." Elena hesitated before speaking, her voice trembling. "You're too late. They're building something, a weapon, big enough to destroy entire planets." The news hit the team like a punch to the gut. Blake exchanged a glance with Ford, who looked equally grim. This mission just became far more dangerous and far more critical. "We'll deal with it," Blake said firmly. "But first, we need to get you out of here." As they worked to free Elena, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, bathing the room in a harsh glow. Somewhere, someone, or something had detected their presence. The Vorthak were coming. Task Force Eclipse had no choice but to fight their way out. The alarms screamed through the extraction facility, echoing off the cold, metallic walls. Task Force Eclipse moved quickly, their training kicking in despite the chaos around them. Captain Ryan Blake grabbed Elena Torres by the arm and pulled her to her feet. "Stay close," he ordered, his voice firm but calm. She nodded, her legs trembling as she tried to keep up. Corporal Jessica Lane was already on the move, sprinting toward a high vantage point. She scaled a nearby staircase, her boots pounding against the metal steps. Once she reached the top, She crouched behind a railing and peered through her scope. Below, biomechanical drones swarmed into the chamber, their glowing eyes scanning for intruders. Hostiles incoming, she called over the comms. Looks like 20 or more. They're spreading out. Hold your fire until they're close, Blake replied. He turned to Sergeant Lucas Ford. Set up a perimeter. We need to buy time. Ford nodded and motioned for Private Marcus Reed to follow him. The two men hurried to opposite sides of the room, setting explosive charges near key entry points. If things got too hot, they could collapse part of the facility to slow the enemy down. Blake kept Alina close, guiding her toward the exit. But before they could reach it, a group of Vorthak soldiers burst through a doorway, their weapons raised. Time seemed to slow as Blake reacted instantly. He shoved Alina behind a console for cover and opened fire, his shots precise and deadly. Two Vorthak dropped immediately, but more poured in, their movements unnervingly fast. Jessica's rifle cracked from above, each shot finding its mark. One by one, the alien soldiers fell, their bodies hitting the ground with heavy thuds. That's 10 down, she shouted. But they're not stopping. They never do, Ford muttered under his breath as he tossed a grenade into a cluster of drones. The explosion sent shrapnel flying, tearing through the machines and scattering their remains across the floor. Private Reed stayed near the exit, his weapon trained on the hallway. His hand shook slightly, but he forced himself to focus. When a drone rounded the corner, he fired without hesitation, taking it down with a clean shot. For a moment, he felt a flicker of pride. Not just anyone could stay steady under pressure like this. Alina watched the battle unfold with wide, terrified eyes. She had never seen anything like it. These soldiers fought with a level of skill and determination that left her speechless. Yet even as they held their ground, she knew they couldn't keep this up forever. "We need to go," Blake yelled, reloading his rifle. "Now." Jessica slid down the stairs, landing beside the team. "Clear path to the north corridor," she said quickly. "But we've got company coming from the east." "Then we split up," Blake decided. "Ford, you and Reed head east. Disable whatever you can along the way. Lane, you're with me and Torres. We'll secure an escape route." Ford didn't argue. He trusted Blake's judgment, even if splitting the team felt risky. He grabbed Reed by the shoulder. "Stick with me, kid. Let's make this count." The two groups separated, moving swiftly through the labyrinthine facility. Ford and Reed planted explosives at critical junctions, destroying equipment and disrupting the Vorthak's operations. Meanwhile, Blake, Jessica, and Alina pushed forward, fighting their way toward the exit. As they neared the outer doors, a massive Vorthak soldier blocked their path. It was taller and stronger than the others, its armor gleaming menacingly in the red emergency lights. Blake stepped forward, his weapon aimed squarely at the creature's chest. "Cover me," he told Jessica. She obeyed, firing at the surrounding drones to keep them at bay. Blake charged the Vorthak soldier, dodging its powerful swings and striking back with relentless precision. Finally, with a well-placed shot to its exposed joint, the creature collapsed with a deafening roar. "This way," Blake shouted, kicking open the exit door. Fresh air rushed in, a welcome relief after the suffocating atmosphere of the facility. Outside, Ford and Reed rejoined the group, both covered in sweat and soot. "Mission accomplished," Ford reported. "We crippled their operation, at least for now." Blake nodded, glancing back at the burning facility. They had done what they came to do, but the cost had been high. The team was battered, exhausted, and running low on supplies. Still, there was no time to rest. The Vorthak would regroup, and humanity's fight was far from over. "Let's move," Blake said, leading the way into the darkness. Behind them, the facility crumbled in flames, a small victory in a war that showed no signs of ending. The team stumbled into the safety of the U.S. Vanguard, their bodies aching and their minds racing. Captain Ryan Blake slammed the hatch shut behind them. sealing out the chaos they had left behind. The ship hummed to life as the engines roared, propelling them away from the burning facility. For now, they were safe, but the victory felt hollow. The Lina Torres sat in the corner of the cargo bay, her hands trembling as she clutched a blanket someone had given her. Her eyes darted around the room, taking in the faces of the soldiers who had risked everything to save her. She wanted to thank them, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she whispered, "What happens now?" Blake glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Now we figure out how to stop them for good." Sergeant Lucas Ford leaned against the wall, wiping blood from a cut on his forehead. His voice was low but firm. "That weapon Elena mentioned, it's still out there. If we don't find it, this was all for nothing." "We need intel," Corporal Jessica Lane added, reloading her rifle with steady hands. "If the Vorthak are building something big, there's got to be more facilities like the one we just hit. We start looking." Private Marcus Reed sat quietly, his face pale. He had seen too much in such a short time. The weight of what they had done, and what they still had to do, was crushing him. But he forced himself to stay focused. These people were counting on him, whether he felt ready or not. As the Vanguard raced through space, Blake gathered the team in the briefing room. The dim lights cast long shadows across their tired faces. He spread out a map of known Vorthak territories on the table, pointing to a cluster of planets marked in red. "This is where they're concentrating their efforts," he explained. "If we're going to find that weapon, it'll be here." Ford frowned, studying the map. "That's deep in enemy territory. Even with the cloak, we won't last long if they spot us." "We don't have a choice," Blake replied sharply. "If we wait, they'll finish whatever they're building. Then it's over, for all of us." Jessica raised an eyebrow. "So what's the plan? Sneak in, load up, and hope we make it out alive." "Something like that," Blake said grimly. "But this time, we split into two teams. One hits the weapon directly while the other creates a distraction. It's risky, but it's our best shot." The room fell silent as everyone processed the idea. They all knew what splitting up meant: fewer chances of survival. But no one argued. They had come this far, and turning back wasn't an option. Hours later, the Vanguard approached the target location, a heavily guarded planet surrounded by Vorthak ships. Blake gave the order to activate the cloaking device, and the ship vanished from sight. As they descended, the team prepared for what lay ahead. "This is it," Blake said, addressing the group one last time. "We've trained for this. We've fought harder battles than this. Trust each other, and we'll get through it." Ford and Reed would lead the sabotage team, tasked with disabling the weapon's core. Blake and Jessica would handle the distraction, drawing the enemy's attention away from the real mission. The Lena stayed aboard the ship, insisting she couldn't slow them down. Though reluctant to leave her behind, Blake agreed. It was safer for her, and they needed every fighter they could get. The moment they landed, chaos erupted. Blake and Jessica moved quickly, setting off explosions near key structures to lure the Vorthak forces away. The aliens responded immediately, swarming toward the commotion. Meanwhile, Ford and Reed slipped into the heart of the facility unnoticed. Inside, the weapon loomed large and ominous, its design alien and terrifying. Ford planted explosives around the core while Reed kept watch, his weapon ready. The tension was unbearable. Every sound made them flinch. Every shadow seemed like an enemy waiting to strike. Finally, Ford stepped back, sweat dripping down his face. "It's done. Let's move." But as they turned to leave, alarms blared throughout the facility. The Vorthak had discovered them. Reinforcements poured in, cutting off their escape route. Ford cursed under his breath. "Go," he yelled at Reed. "I'll hold them off." "No," Reed shouted, panic rising in his voice. "We stick together. There's no time to argue." Ford snapped. "Get out of here." Reluctantly, Reed obeyed, sprinting toward the exit. Behind him, Ford stood his ground, firing relentlessly at the advancing Vorthak. His sacrifice gave Reed the chance he needed to escape, but it came at a cost. Back outside, Blake and Jessica regrouped with Reed, just as the facility exploded in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave knocked them off their feet, but they were alive. The weapon was destroyed. As they limped back to the Vanguard the absence of Ford weighed heavily on them. They had succeeded, but the victory felt bittersweet. The war was far from over, and the losses were piling up. Still, they pressed on, knowing humanity's survival depended on them. Document. Part 6 of All Hope Was Lost, until humanity's ruthless soldiers arrived. The U.S. Vanguard drifted silently through space, the weight of their recent mission hanging over the crew like a dark cloud. Sergeant Lucas Ford's sacrifice had saved them, but his absence left a void no one could fill. Private Marcus Reed sat in the corner of the ship's common area, staring at the floor. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped a cup of cold coffee. He couldn't stop thinking about Ford, how the man had stood his ground, how he had given everything so the rest of them could live. Captain Ryan Blake watched the young soldier from across the room. He knew what it was like to lose someone close on the battlefield. The guilt, the questions that never had answers. It never got easier. But they didn't have time to grieve. Not yet. Humanity's survival depended on them staying focused. Elena Torres approached Blake hesitantly, her face pale but determined. "There's something you need to know," she said quietly. Her voice carried an urgency that made Blake straighten up immediately. "What is it?" he asked. "The weapon we destroyed. It wasn't the only one," Elena admitted. "The Vorthak are building more, and they're not acting alone." Blake frowned. "What do you mean?" "They serve something bigger," Elena continued. "An entity called the Overmind. It's ancient, powerful, and controls everything the Vorthak do. If we want to stop them for good, we have to confront it." The room fell silent as the team processed her words. Corporal Jessica Lane leaned against the wall, her arms crossed. "So we've been fighting the wrong enemy this whole time?" she asked, her tone sharp with frustration. "Not wrong, just incomplete," Blake replied. "If the Overmind is behind all of this, then taking it out is our only chance." Jessica shook her head. "Even if we find it, how are we supposed to kill something like that? We're barely holding on as it is." "We adapt," Blake said firmly. "We've done the impossible before. We'll do it again." Before they could plan their next move, a transmission came through from Earth. General Lisa Monroe appeared on the screen, her expression grim. "Task Force Eclipse," she began. "We've reviewed your reports. Your actions have slowed the Vorthak, but their forces are still overwhelming. Earth's defenses are crumbling. You need to retreat and regroup." "No," Blake said without hesitation. "Retreating won't solve anything. If we don't finish this now, there won't be an Earth left to defend." Monroe sighed deeply. "You're disobeying a direct order, Captain. Do you understand what that means?" "I do," Blake replied. "But I also understand what's at stake. If we don't take down the Overmind, none of us will survive." The line went silent for a moment before Monroe spoke again. "Then you're on your own. Good luck." As the transmission ended, the team exchanged uneasy glances. They were officially rogue now, cut off from any support. But instead of fear, a strange sense of determination settled over them. They had nothing left to lose, and everything to fight for. Using stolen Vorthak technology, Elena traced the Overmind's location to a distant nebula shrouded in swirling clouds of gas and dust. It was a place where few dared to go, a realm of darkness and mystery. Blake studied the coordinates carefully, his jaw tightening. "This is it," he said. "Our final mission." The journey was long and treacherous. The Vanguard encountered numerous Vorthak patrols along the way, forcing them to rely heavily on the cloaking device to avoid detection. Supplies ran low, and tempers flared as exhaustion set in. But no one complained. They all knew what was waiting for them at the end of this path. When they finally reached the nebula, the air aboard the ship grew heavier. Strange energy crackled around them, making the lights flicker and the engines groan under the strain. As they approached the source of the disturbance, the overmind revealed itself, a massive, pulsating organism floating in the void, its surface covered in glowing veins and shifting patterns. "It's alive," Jessica whispered, her voice trembling. "And it knows we're here." Blake tightened his grip on his rifle. "Get ready. This isn't going to be easy." The team prepared for what would likely be their last stand, knowing full well that failure meant the end of humanity. But even in the face of overwhelming odds, they refused to back down. They had come too far to give up now. The U.S. Vanguard approached the Overmind cautiously, its massive form looming in the darkness like a living nightmare. The creature pulsed with an eerie light, its surface shifting and writhing as if it were alive. Strange tendrils extended from its body, reaching out into the void as though searching for something or someone. The sight sent chills down everyone's spines. Captain Ryan Blake stood at the helm, his face pale but resolute. "This is it," he said quietly, more to himself than to the others. "No turning back now." Private Marcus Reed gripped his weapon tightly, his knuckles white. He had never felt fear like this before. It wasn't just the size or appearance of the Overmind. It was the feeling that came with being near it, a suffocating sense of dread, as if the creature could see into their minds and twist their thoughts against them. Elena Torres stayed close to the group, her hands trembling. She had seen enough of the Vorthak to know how dangerous they were. But this was something else entirely. "It's controlling everything," she whispered. "Every move the Vorthak make, every attack, they all come from this thing." Blake nodded grimly. "Then we take it out, no matter what it takes." The team disembarked onto a jagged platform suspended in the nebula, leading toward the Overmind's core. The air around them crackled with energy, making their skin prickle. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the creature itself was resisting their presence. As they moved closer, the environment grew stranger. The ground beneath their feet seemed alive, pulsating faintly with the same rhythm as the Overmind. Shadows twisted and shifted unnaturally, forming shapes that vanished as quickly as they appeared. It was as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling around them. Corporal Jessica Lane scanned the area, her rifle ready. "Stay sharp," she warned. "This place isn't natural. We're walking into a trap." Her words proved true moments later when monstrous creatures emerged from the shadows. They were unlike anything the team had faced before, twisted amalgamations of flesh and metal, their glowing eyes fixed on the intruders. The creatures attacked without warning, moving with unnatural speed. "Hold your ground," Blake shouted, firing his weapon at the nearest enemy. His shots found their mark, but the creatures kept coming, undeterred by injuries that would have killed anything else. Jessica took aim with her sniper rifle, picking off targets with deadly precision. "They're not stopping," she yelled over the chaos. "We need to push forward." Reed struggled to keep up, his heart pounding as he fought to stay alive. One of the creatures lunged at him, its claws inches from his face, but Blake stepped in and shot it down just in time. "Keep moving," Blake ordered. "Don't let them surround us." The team pressed on, fighting their way through waves of enemies. Every step brought them closer to the Overmind's core, but the cost was high. Their weapons overheated, their bodies screamed in exhaustion, and the weight of despair began to crush them. Elena noticed something ahead, a faint glow emanating from the center of the platform. "That's it," she cried. "The core is there." But reaching it wouldn't be easy. The creatures intensified their attacks, forcing the team to fight harder than ever before. Jessica climbed onto a raised ledge to get a better vantage point, firing relentlessly to cover her teammates. "Go," she shouted. "I'll hold them off." "No," Blake yelled back. "We stick together." "I'll be fine," Jessica insisted. Just finish this. Reluctantly, Blake led Reed and Elena toward the core, while Jessica stayed behind, holding off the horde alone. Her shots echoed through the battlefield, until finally, silence fell. The team reached the core, finding it surrounded by pulsating veins of energy. "This is it," Blake said, planting explosives around the base. "Set the charges." As the timer ticked down, the Overmind reacted violently. Its tendrils lashed out, trying to stop them, but it was too late. The explosives detonated, sending a shockwave through the nebula. The creature screamed, a sound so terrible it shook the very stars, and began to collapse in on itself. The team ran back toward the ship, the platform crumbling beneath their feet. Just as they reached the Vanguard the Overmind exploded in a blinding flash of light, obliterating everything around it. Exhausted and battered, the survivors slumped into their seats aboard the ship. They had done the impossible, but at a great cost. Jessica's sacrifice weighed heavily on them, but her bravery had saved them all. As the Vanguard sped away, Blake looked back at the fading light of the destroyed Overmind. It was over, or so they hoped. The U.S. Vanguard limped through space, its engines sputtering and its hull scarred from the battle against the Overmind. Inside, the surviving members of Task Force Eclipse sat in silence, their faces pale and their bodies aching. The fight had taken everything from them: friends, strength, hope, but they had won, or so they thought. Captain Rand Blake stared out the viewport at the stars streaking past. His mind raced with questions. Had they truly destroyed the Overmind? Or was it still out there, waiting to strike again? He glanced at Elena Torres, who sat quietly nearby, her hands wrapped tightly around a cup of water. She looked as uncertain as he felt. "We did it," Private Marcus Reed finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We stopped it." Blake shook his head slowly. "Maybe. But we can't be sure." "Not yet." Elena nodded. "The Overmind was ancient. It might have ways of surviving. We need to stay vigilant." The others exchanged uneasy glances but didn't argue. They were too tired, too broken to think about another fight. For now, they allowed themselves a moment of quiet, even if it felt fragile and fleeting. Hours later, the Vanguard approached Earth. The planet looked different than when they had left it, darker, quieter. Cities that once buzzed with life were now dimmed, their lights extinguished under the shadow of fear. As they descended, Blake prepared himself for what awaited them. Would humanity cheer their return, or would they be seen as rogue soldiers who had defied orders? When they landed, a small crowd gathered outside the ship. General Lisa Monroe stood at the front, her expression unreadable. Blake stepped off the ramp first, followed by Reed and Elena. Jessica Lane's absence was painfully obvious, and it hung over them like a storm cloud. "You disobeyed my orders," Monroe said bluntly, her voice cutting through the silence. "You risked everything on a mission I told you to abandon." Blake met her gaze without flinching. "And we saved humanity because of it." Monroe studied him for a long moment before nodding slowly. "You're right. The Vorthek forces are retreating. Whatever you did out there, it worked." Relief washed over the team, but it was short-lived. They knew the galaxy would never fully recover from what had happened. Too many lives had been lost, too much damage had been done. Still, the fact that humanity had survived gave them a flicker of hope. In the weeks that followed, stories of Task Force Eclipse spread across the planet. They were hailed as heroes, though none of them felt like one. Blake avoided the celebrations, instead visiting the graves of those who had fallen. Lucas Ford, Jessica Lane, and countless others. Each name carved into stone was a reminder of the cost of victory. Reed struggled to adjust to life after the war. The horrors he had witnessed haunted him every night, but he found solace in helping rebuild the colonies. Slowly, he began to heal, finding purpose in the work. Elena dedicated herself to studying the remnants of Vorthak technology, determined to ensure that nothing like this could ever happen again. Her reports helped Earth prepare for future threats, though she often wondered if humanity was truly ready. As for Blake, he returned to the stars. The fight was over, but he couldn't shake the feeling that danger still lingered somewhere in the vastness of space. He volunteered to lead reconnaissance missions, searching for signs of new enemies, or old ones returning. One evening, as he gazed at the horizon from the cockpit of a small patrol ship, he allowed himself a rare smile. The galaxy was scared, yes, but it was alive. Humanity had endured, thanks to the courage of those who refused to give up, even when all hope seemed lost. Though the road ahead would be long and difficult, Blake knew one thing for certain. As long as there were people willing to stand against the darkness, humanity would always find a way to survive. And that was enough. For now.